Hey everybody, Rodney Auth here, Park People podcast host and publisher of PRB Plus magazine. I'm here today with Rich Albright, who is the Chief Revenue Officer over at PlayPower. He wrote an article for us that's being published in the May issue titled Designing for All Ages, The Playground Revolution. a nice title. And we're going to walk through that today. And of course, if you want to read the article, it's going to be on the web and in the magazine in May. So, Rich, welcome to the Park People Podcast. How are you today?
Rodney, I'm really well. I'm very appreciative of you having me on and the opportunity to spend some time together. Super stoked.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. We're glad to have you. So tell me a little bit about, the playground revolution.
When you put it like that, it's definitely kind of a very broad and bold statement. But, I think playgrounds over time have always been, targeted to kids of all ages. However, we've really seen a pretty significant evolution into multi-generational play. And I think for a whole lot of reasons. I think there are more and more family-oriented destinations that a lot of communities are embracing. And so at different places, like it could be at, entertainment centers, or it could be at, municipally owned recreation centers, which we're seeing a huge push in. But it's about bringing the whole family together. And we're seeing a lot of families with, really, instead of just having a cluster of kids all around the same age, there's some breaks and puts and stops. And you've got, that classic 12-year-old who's got to find a way to hang out with the 3-year-old, and a parent who's trying to kind of manage both. So what we've seen is, even teenagers are getting into the mix, and also parents, younger parents especially, are playing more and more with their kids. So it's not just drop and dump, but it's really more along the lines of, hey, let me get in there and engage with you. So for all of those reasons, we're seeing this huge need and demand to drive multi-generational play.
Okay. So what do you think, we saw in COVID, right? We saw, and I don't know if the tail of this goes back to COVID, and we've been talking about multi-generational play for as long as I can remember, much before COVID. But I know that we saw a whole, organic, let's call it, push, into the full family, sometimes from the grandparents on down, being at a playground. We saw some changing behaviors in that if you put solar chargers so that the mom or dad who's working from home, this was back at that time, they felt very safe and they would go and they'd spend hours there, right? But if they didn't have a way to charge their device to keep connected, or to pretend work or whatever it was, maybe their time there was more limited. So coming out of that, and now transitioning into what you were just talking about, is it just a demographic switch? Is it just a mindset switch? Is it what do you think's driving it? Is it just or is it all of the above?
Yeah, it's a great question. I do think it's not one single lever. I think it's a whole bunch of things kind of converging, and we're all kind of putting the pieces together in a post-COVID universe, trying to figure out what this new normal looks like. It's been a few years, obviously, but a lot of these park build cycles are 18 to 24 months anyway, right? Some of these large rec centers. And so I do think that there's some derivatives from a post-COVID, kind of psychology and way of thinking. I would also, just opine that people that play might be more important than ever. I think, some of this is my opinion, and some of this research bears out. And what we've seen is I think people are understanding the need for play and going back to play perhaps more than they've ever gone. I think the desire to get off of iPads and iPhones for kids and parents, right? And so to make sure you run and jump and play and climb and experience and you argue and you fight and you solve. I think there's more and more research that comes out every day just stressing the importance of it. And then I also just think that in a world of kind of uber complexity, people like the idea of like, hey, let's go climb and run and jump and laugh. And so I think there's a lot of reasons that are converging to make this more important than ever.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly, we see that a ton, right? Like, and I'm out in central Idaho here, so there's a culture of just, mountain, you know, activity, right? Like it's hard, if people don't get out a couple times a day to do something outdoors, they don't feel quite right, right?
Right,
And
right.
and when I go back east and visit with family members, I see that there's more activity. It might not even be park-based activity, whether it's just walking or just getting outside, than I remember. Now maybe I'm
Yeah.
misremembering when I was back there, but it seems like we are trending towards, I got to take a break, get out, nature's good. Nature's good for me. Play is very good for me. Whatever that means, it can mean any different things to different people. So if somebody's looking to build with intent, multi-generational, spaces, right? Or spaces that would be more attractive potentially to multi-generational clientele. What does that look like?
So I want to piggyback on something you just said first, if you don't mind,
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
because there's one other kind of demographic, psychographic factor that also kind of comes in because, I think traditionally, a lot of things we're talking about is getting out and playing, but with the soft play article that we wrote, I think it also is about indoor play. And
Right.
I want to put some emphasis there because there's also a desire for year-round play, Rodney. And
Hmm.
I think that's interesting because, um, you know, I live in northern Indiana, Rodney, and so like for 6 months of the year we live a we don't live the Idaho lifestyle, man. Like
No,
like like like
I'm
like
from Cleveland originally, so I know.
so you understand,
Yeah.
like it's mid-April and we're just now kind of starting to break into something that's manageable. And
Right.
so I say that to say there's greater awareness of parents that they want their children to not only be safe, but in some form of a year-round and climate-controlled environment. And so indoor play has been expanding. There's definitely been a market tailwind. Northern markets like Minneapolis and Seattle and in the upper Midwest, the Northeast, we're really seeing a drive towards indoor play, specifically with municipal recreation centers. So that's been a thing. And then the other thing that I wanted to just touch on is shade, which is, making sure that people are safe from, UV and all of those things. So finding that it's interesting. There's almost like these conflicting demographic shifts of on one hand, it's like get out, play, run, jump, climb, but at the same
Yeah.
time, let's also be safe. And and,
Right.
and so our job as a manufacturer is to find that sweet spot and really design a playground that checks all of those boxes and that also is super fun. So to answer your question directly that you just asked, I think it's really the qualification in the playground brief. That process maybe 10 years ago was maybe, not quite as thorough as we approach it today. We have an entire intake process where we really spend time not just understanding the facts of like we need to have 47 kids at a time, we need to have, this amount of play value, but really
Right.
talk about like what times of day are people going to be here by and large. What do you see? Is there an after school rush where you might have more kids than not, and you need to kind of build more? And then breaking down like what are the different age ranges? One of the age ranges that we're seeing emerge, Rodney, is teens, right?
Hmm.
And so how do we find a way for young teens to kind of find a place to go play? In how do you have an adventure course that also is right next to or near or adjacent to like toddlers, right? So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of art to it as well as the science. The intake part of it historically was very science based. Now I think it's art and science of how do we blend a space that might have mounds and climbing areas and a few climb on things for younger kids in the 6 to 24 month age, but have it, a pseudo obstacle course or adventure course for the teenagers in a nearby space. And I think, and then the other thing that kind of, as Rodney, we live in an HGTV universe, right? It also it has to like be cool. It also has to look cool.
Yeah.
And so,
Right.
so then we have to tie it all together architecturally. And so I
Yeah.
think to do it well, investing that time up front is really the direct answer to your question.
Yeah. we just had a guest down, I don't know, 2 weeks ago from OLC, which is a big architecture firm that's really specializes in community centers, rec centers, municipal spaces. And one of the trends they've seen that dovetails in with exactly what you were saying is the need to program or design, program's the wrong word, design spaces around the running tracks in these places, like in the
Yeah.
corners and whatever, and put in places where they can intentionally build community. And
Right.
they're using some play spaces, some play space products intentionally for that. The idea being, one of the things that there's a hunger for, that's always been a hunger for, but maybe we've realized it here recently, is like this connection that you have with people you may not know, even if you're
Yeah.
just playing next to somebody that is, new to you, right? Or whether it's one of your
Right.
friends, or whether you bump into somebody you know, and like not like gaming the system necessarily, but like trying to
Right.
make it so that organically those interactions and that community building can happen, which is a whole nother segment of the health equation, right? Of the design
Yeah.
equation, right? Which I'm thinking is kind of what you were just in some ways what you were saying too, like having the toddlers next to the teenagers, having it all work, in a meaningful way, right?
Yeah.
So if what aspects, like when people are talking, they come to you, they're going to go through your intake form. Maybe we could focus a little bit less on the science side and a little more on the psychology side, or whatever the word was that you used. I forgot already. What does that look like? Like what, when, you gave a couple of points, but like maybe dig a little bit deeper into like,
Sure.
how that works. Because
Yeah.
that's an interesting thought.
Well, what's interesting, so people like have thoughts and ideas of like, hey, it needs to be tall, it needs to have a huge slide, it needs to have a climb. I think for a lot of folks, it's hard to kind of visualize how that translates. So what we've put together, in addition to like a super robust intake process, is also a design iteration process that really gets the community leaders, whether it's indoor or outdoor play, like involved into the design process. It might take a little bit longer by doing it
Yeah.
that way, by kind of
Right.
having that iterative type of process. But you know, it's almost kind of like, a swipe right, swipe left type of thinking that we have. Do you like this? No, do you like this? And that could be on anything from color, but we really do want to make sure we get the overall, it needs to be a super inviting space. And so I think the
Right.
art comes into how do we execute on the brief? And the execution is like subjective, super subjective. And again, it's everything from color to type of climber. What is the centerpiece of the whole thing? What is the shade structure, which is oftentimes the focal point. So we've really got to work with that end user, which again, sometimes it's private money, sometimes it's public money. I will tell you, like on the soft play side, we're mostly like private capex type of money. It's not like,
Okay.
not like municipal spend.
Right.
And it's not strange at all for us to kind of have someone say, I love that, let's do this. And like the
Right.
budget go up like, a
Yeah.
crazy amount.
Right.
Like
Right.
that's one of the fun parts of working in soft play is like, budgets are relative because they need to make it cool.
Right.
And
Right.
so it's got to be destination oriented. And so that's a big difference between the public and private, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Totally. So where's it all going? Like, what are the trends that you see, that we're just, maybe are just starting, or, things that you think we're going to get better at or pay more attention to in the coming years?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like how do you, one of the things that we're trying to kind of lean into is the life of the playground, right?
Hmm.
And so that it's not just a design, a submittal, an approval, a grand opening, and then wish each other well, like until
Right.
like 7 years pass, like or
Right.
whatever. But it's kind of like, no, how do we think about upgrading and updating and kind of refreshing the playground over time? And so we're
Right.
putting in different ways that we can find these upgrade opportunities so the park remains fresh. Not only
Yeah.
like just in good operation, and I think that's table stakes, right? It has
Right.
to work well, but I think, how do we create upgrades? Maybe we update and upgrade STEM-based learning panels and things along those lines, that we can
Hmm.
incorporate new interactive games that could be analog or could be digital, like, within the body and structure of the play structure. So I
Right.
think we're looking at that. We're also doing, one of the things that we do with PlayPower and with soft play, is we also do different theming and cladding. So we can take like a play structure that today might be, like a dinosaur themed, and we could evolve that into making it more of a Viking theme,
Yeah, right.
or space theme. And so again, I think that life of the playground mentality is something that we believe will be an emerging trend, and
Hmm.
in building a partnership with your play partners. It's kind of and it's also super fun for us, because we're thinking about not just today and tomorrow, but the next day,
Right, right. Oh, yeah, you guys are in a fun space. It's so vibrant,
Yeah.
kind of ever changing, and there's a little storytelling component to it that's always kind of there, which is always interesting. So, well, you're the expert. I'm just the numbnuts asking questions that I'm probably not qualified to ask. So, like, we always ask our guests, if you were me, if you were interviewing yourself, what did we forget to talk about?
So there is actually one thing, Rodney,
Sure.
and it's just around this evolving definition of inclusivity, and
Yep.
and it's something that like a lot of people, like, kind of use ubiquitously. But I think inclusivity, to think about kids of not just all ages, but of all abilities, and making sure that whether it's physical, mental, emotional, that we have spaces that are safe and encouraging. That you don't just have multi-generational play, but you're having kids of different abilities all playing together. So I think inclusive play, and I mentioned kind of like mental and emotional, like autism in children on the spectrum is an emerging. It's a really unfortunate statistic of just the number of kids who are diagnosed with something
Right.
being somewhere on the spectrum, and finding a way that they can feel safe and included, and that parents can feel safe and included, to be there with them, that they can feel good about taking their kid. That's something that also goes into the art and design of the play structure as well. And I think that's like not just an ADA requirement or checking a box, but really thinking about how a kid of any talent in any physical ability or mental ability can really thrive,
Yeah, totally. We had a guest yesterday who's an expert in this arena, and so I should ask you this question. What are, um, you know, and you are right, you started by saying inclusive is kind of a catch-all term that means
Yeah.
who knows what it means, right? Like people kind of slap it on things, and maybe it is
Yeah.
inclusive, maybe it isn't. And not throwing any daggers at anybody, but just, it's, maybe it's become a marketing term more than a
Right.
than a real term. But like when you guys dig down under inclusive, so you've got mobility issues, you've got hearing, you've got depth perception, you've
Sure.
got sensory, like what are the broad categories that if somebody comes to you and say, so my experience in talking with folks in the space is that most people can't afford to do all of the different offshoots of inclusivity. So they might start with a playground and say, okay, this one's going to be our sensory area. So we got sensory, and this one's going to be mobility maybe, and they kind of add to spaces. And then at some point down the road, maybe we'll build a big one that, that is our showcase. But we can't afford the big one right now. So we're going to kind of knock off these. So what are those? Like what are those five, six, four, three, whatever the number is?
Yeah, look, I think you nailed it, like in terms of the categories that you brought up. But I'm going to do you a solid, and not only like am I hopefully I did a decent job as your guest here,
Yeah, you
but
did.
like I'm actually going to get you another guest,
Okay,
to
well, that's
sign up.
good.
A woman who we work with really, really closely to make sure that we are doing everything we can to stay on top of what inclusive really means. Her name is
Yeah.
Natalie McKay, and she
Okay.
runs a company in St. Louis called Unlimited Play. And
Ah,
she is
okay.
our partner in the inclusive space. And I
Okay.
think that like having someone who has experienced directly kind of what this means and how it's evolving. She keeps her finger on the absolute pulse, and she is beyond a consultant to us. She's a partner, and we actually build playgrounds, and including doing a lot of fundraising for playgrounds all around the United States. She actually spearheads fundraising, and we've built like over 77 playgrounds in conjunction with Natalie. She has like a gold level and a platinum level, different levels of inclusivity, because you're right, like it is tough. In some of the smaller rural areas, like to do all of that, it's a really tough thing, but it's also a necessary thing. So how do you do it? And so Natalie has been a great partner in that. And I think, again, I could do a decent job of answering your question, but it's not just checking all the boxes. It's more along the lines of how do you integrate all of that into a broader solution. So yeah, I highly recommend that you contact.
What we know about those areas is constantly evolving, like rapidly. Like, what you did last year, you might not do it next year because now we know something else.
That's exactly right. Right.
Yeah.
We fly as we build, and we build as we fly. And so, yeah, man, that's about it. There was one other thing, and I hate to end on this, like the inclusivity is a great piece to end, but the other thing that, like, in talking about parents, and this is something that our research has shown, like, don't overlook and assume having effective seating. Because at some point, like, the old guys get tired. I can attest to this. I can speak firsthand. And so, like, you get a little tired and worn out, or you want to take a break and you want to be comfortable doing it, or you want to be you can see your kids, but you might have to take a call for work. So seating in the right places and the right comfort has really been part of the art of the thing as well. So look, man, I could go on and on. This is a super fun thing,
I get it, because it's not only seating, but feeling safe, right? Like, moms and dads and kids, and, there's a whole safety component that I think we all took for granted because it's a park, it's, no big deal, but what's the lighting like, is there bathrooms have become huge, as in addition to seating, right? Like, that's you can call on nature, you have a call on nature. You don't have to walk to the other end of the park.
That's exactly right.
And leave your kid playing there or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I appreciate your time. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much. I love the time and really like what you guys do there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, hey, have a good rest of your week, and we'll get this all wrapped up and send you a copy of it so you can say that you were on the world's most unprofessional podcast.
You don't get numbnuts very often in the podcast universe. So yeah.
You don't, yeah.
Yeah. It's a new thing. It's new.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Bye-bye. See ya.